In life spanning, there is no plan B. I'm Jean Faracaba, and my guests are coming to this podcast for a reason. There's no rules, no BS, just pure biohacking. I don't want to know what you have to sell. I want to know who you are. We're live. Thank you for joining the show. Welcome to the No Plan B podcast. Dr. Dave Rabin. You have a long story behind you as a scientist, neuroscientist, psychiatrist, and inventor of beautiful technology. Would you mind taking a few minutes of your time to introduce yourself? You're going to do a better job than if I do it.
Sure. It's a pleasure to be here with you. Thanks so much for having me. As you said, I'm a psychiatrist and neuroscientist. I am the inventor of the Apollo Neuro technology, which came out of our work working with veterans with severe treatment-resistant trauma disorders at the University of Pittsburgh Medical Center and the VA. And I've always been interested in studying in chronic stress and resilience. I've studied chronic stress in folks with severe mental illness and in folks with aging disorders like dementia and blindness disorders, as well as in elite athletes and military for the better part of 20 years now. And I've always been fascinated by consciousness and what makes us tick and make meaning from the world. And working with, I've also always really enjoyed solving hard problems that we don't have solutions for. And mental health really stood out as something that was interesting to me because we don't have a lot of good solutions that work for mental illness for long term, particularly in folks with post-traumatic stress disorder. And so as I started to work with these populations, I realized that firsthand we were really struggling to treat these people in a way that was effective. And so I started to explore other things outside the box of our standard treatments, including Eastern and tribal techniques, and even things like psychedelic-assisted therapy, which as of 2012 were really starting to come up the pipeline for showing incredible results in clinical trials or being published in world-renowned journals, scientific journals. And then, around that time, I decided that I needed to become a psychiatrist and start focusing on mental health in a much more direct and full-time way. And so I did that, and we developed Apollo out of my work at the University of Pittsburgh, trying to understand how to improve the functioning of the nervous system to help support people with PTSD without drugs. And it worked really well. And here we are.
Yeah, I agree. It worked very well. It was magical. Many people were always questioning, because I've been part of the initial testing on that product. The first series you had, I had the privilege of being able to test it and have it with me for my workout and everything. And people were always asking me, what is it, how it works? And it was kind of bizarre for everybody to see like a small wearable bracelet doing so much. Can you explain how that works?
Sure. Well, I think it starts with music, right? All of us have had experiences with music. Like you've had that experience where you're not feeling so great, or you had a rough day, and then your favorite song comes on, right? And then all of a sudden you feel better, right? And how long does it take for you to feel better once your favorite song comes on?
True. Yeah.
It's almost seconds. Yeah, it's almost instantaneous, right? Yeah. And that's a universal human experience. There's very few people, I've never known a single person actually who has not had that experience. And yet we have never had a really good explanation in neuroscience for why that works. Why is it that we can take a person like us who's having a really terrible day and then add our favorite song, especially if that song comes on by chance, unpredictably, and then that equals new happy person, right? There's never been a good explanation for that. And I came from I grew up as a musician with a lot of musical background. I was never particularly great at music, but I loved it. And I always noticed how much of a dramatic impact it had on my life and how I felt and my ability to think and feel better. And I also, went into the field of neuroscience and psychiatry. And as we started to explore what helped our patients, we realized that many of them were already using music to feel better and to change the way they felt. But music requires your ears, and we need our ears for lots of different different things in our lives. And so when we started to explore this technology, we looked at, music as a great model, because music can do lots of different things. It can turn
Correct.
your energy up and your mood up. It can turn your energy down and your mood down. It
Takes
can
you down.
invoke
Yeah.
all different kinds of emotions. It can help access meditative states. It can do all different kinds of things.
Hmm.
And it's all based on rhythm and melody. And so as we started to explore this around music, we realized that you could actually deliver music to the body instead of the ears, and you could induce the same kinds of effects. And as we started to pull on those threads and explore that in the lab, we realized that music to the body was actually just as effective as music to the ears, but you can use it anytime you want, all the time, and it has no side effects and doesn't interfere with your ability to function in the world. It actually enhances it. And so that became the Apollo technology that we then tested in studies and released in 2020 to the consumer market.
Yeah. But to make it easy to understand for certain people that haven't seen the unit yet, you don't hear any music out of it. You actually, it's completely silent almost. And it makes some sort of vibration on your body, wherever you place it, if it's on your wrist or ankle. Here too. Yeah, you have one now? Oh, yeah,
Yeah,
nice.
I'm wearing one on my chest right now. You can see. It works
Awesome.
anywhere. It works anywhere on the body. Unlike most wearables, you don't. It's not the specific location. But the vibration patterns are very specific to our bodies, and the human body resonates at a specific many vibration patterns. And we figured out a few in particular that bring the heart and the lungs into what's called coherence, which
Hmm.
is when our heart and lungs are working in optimal synchrony together, meaning that imagine like our body is like an orchestra, and our orchestra can play out of tune, out of time, and it sounds terrible, right? Anybody who's heard an orchestra play out of tune sounds awful. But all of a sudden, you take all those instruments and you bring them into harmony, into resonance, so they're playing in time in the same key, and it could create one of the most beautiful symphonies you've ever heard, right? And that ability to create that beautiful symphony is available to all of us. It's available literally just within our mind-body complex, and we can tap into it in any moment by just changing our breath pattern. And that's
Yeah.
what the biofeedback has demonstrated for the last 70 years, is that this is possible, and it's proven by science. It's been known about for thousands of years from
Hmm.
Eastern breathing techniques and meditation techniques, but now over the last 70 years, it's been proven in Western science. And so what we figured out was that you can, using these gentle vibration patterns delivered to the body, anywhere on the body, that you can nudge the body into meditative states in as little as minutes, which is really interesting. And you can see your heart rate variability go up. And there's never been a technology before Apollo that increased heart rate variability just by wearing it. And anybody who's listening to this who's never tried Apollo can actually now download, if you have an iPhone, you can download an Apollo app and try it as a demo on your phone. So
Oh,
you can actually
I didn't know
feel what
that.
we're talking about, and you'll notice that this is unlike any vibration you've ever felt come out of your phone, because it feels calming and soothing to the body. So that's a good way to try it for anybody who's tuned in
Yeah,
right now.
that's very cool. I didn't know you had that application. Now I'm gonna tell my people to do that. Question for you. So you're pacing down the body in order to pace down the brain. The signal goes. How does that work? Like the comparison you made with a symphony or an orchestra, it's fantastic. Now I want to understand how that works with putting our brain in the right wavelength, or if you do that, if that does it, I believe so, because you're changing the pace from beta to gamma and alpha in any direction. Could you dig a bit into this particular process?
Sure. So everything starts with breath and ends with breath. That's how we work as human beings. So
Right.
if you go to the doctor today and you have your breath rate measured, what most doctors will tell you is that you're falling somewhere between 12 and 24 breaths per minute, which what doctors say and the literature says is normal breathing for humans, for the average human. But that's actually stress breathing for the average human. Normal breath rate for an average human is 5 to 7 breaths per minute at rest. If we're
Mm.
breathing at 12 to 24 breaths per minute, it's stress breathing. So when we breathe at a stressed rate, because say there's too much information coming in, our environment is too fast, too noisy, too many responsibilities, too much news, too much phone, whatever it is, all of those things increase our breath rate, and that results in increased heart rate, increased blood pressure, decreased heart rate variability, and most importantly, increased speed of our thoughts. stress, right? And so this is one of the major causes of anxiety, is that we're not breathing properly. And this is what the field of biofeedback has shown, is that if we train ourselves to breathe intentionally, which really means just taking your attention and directing it to your breath and breathing on purpose, and you do that for 3 minutes, 95% of people enter this coherence meditative state around 5 to 7 breaths per minute.
Yeah.
And at 5 to 7 breaths per minute, guess what happens? Your heart rate comes down, your blood pressure comes down, your heart rate variability, the leading metric of resilience and recovery, goes up, and our thoughts start to slow down and then eventually can stop at the point where we have what's called in meditation quiet mind or observer mind. And this is when we're at our peak in terms of flow. So anybody who's ever heard of a flow state, which I'm sure is most of the listeners of your show, it's one of the most exciting, desirable states to be in life, right? It's when we're completely, fully present in the moment with whatever we're doing. We don't have racing thoughts. We're just kind of in it. We're focused. Our mind's quiet, but our attention is keen and acute, and we're ready to tune in to whatever it is that's right in front of us and do well and excel at it, because we're fully present. And that state is available to all of us as humans. We all have different ways of accessing it, but we have to train ourselves to get into that state, which is our optimal human functioning state. And what the Buddhist and Tibetan monks have talked about for thousands of years is that we can breathe our way into that state, and we can train ourselves to be in that state whenever we want, and we can keep ourselves in that state as long as we want. So kind of piggybacking on this ancient theory around flow states, coherent states, peak presentness states, which is where we're our best selves, we thought, well, what if there was a way if music can do it, and we know soothing touch can do it, what if there was a way to deliver soothing vibration to the body that the touch receptors in our skin and bones pick up and then send a signal to us that, hey, it's okay you're safe enough to enter a flow state right now, right? You're safe enough to slow down your breathing, calm your brain, and then enter into a flow state and be present and mindful. And so that's what Apollo does. So it's the same effect as if you had practiced meditative breathing for years, but it's something that gives you that benefit on the go and then trains you how to breathe at the ideal rate as you use it.
Yeah, love it. And I know it's true and it works. You've been a fan of self-healing your whole life, in your parkour, in your personal life, in your professional life. Is Apollo a tool that compensates self-healing, helps self-healing, or like it's just an overall process that you need to understand the concept of self-healing to use Apollo Neuro, or you can use Apollo Neuro without believing at all in the self-healing process?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think it's more than just a belief in self-healing. It's an understanding that as people, and as animals on this earth, even plants, we heal ourselves naturally. That's just part of how we work. It's not a mystery. It's not a belief system. It's literally the way that we work as humans and animals and plants, is we all heal ourselves. That's how we do it. If you pull a tail off a lizard, that tail will, if it's the right kind of lizard, that tail grows back, right? The lizard has the ability to heal itself. It's the same with a plant. And so plants will regrow parts that have been injured. And so will humans. Not everything, but we'll repair naturally lots of things. And the tendency of the body is to heal itself, not to get sick. So it's actually, if you go, this is from Eastern medicine traditions. This is thousands of years old, this concept of self-healing. And that's what all Eastern and tribal practices are about. And if you even go moving forward to, 2000 BC or so, around when Hippocrates, the founding father of Western medicine, founded what we now know as Western medicine, he was, considered to be one of the first Western physicians. And Hippocrates also said that the source of healing comes from within the person seeking to be healed. Yeah. So the idea of self-healing has always been a core part of modern medicine and ancient medicine. But when we get too stuck on this idea of medications being the source of healing, or medications being required for healing, or me, your doctor, being required to heal you, then what it does is it externalizes the healing power to something outside of you. So it gives it to the medicine, or it gives it to me, and I can't heal you. I can only give you the tools. I can be your guide, but I can't heal you. You have to heal you. And the medicines heal you. They can be tools that help support your healing, but they don't heal you. Even with antibiotics weaken the offending bacteria, but our bodies have to and heal.
Yeah, you have to clear wrapping it up. Yeah.
Right. So it's the
Yeah.
same thing with emotions. And you don't have to have an understanding of this to get that benefit or to use Apollo. Apollo just helps, it works by reminding our bodies that we're safe enough to divert resources away from the stress response system and to the recovery response system. And the recovery response system that we know as the vagal nerve system or the parasympathetic rest and digest recovery system, these systems need to get energy and resources and blood flow to be able to heal and to start that healing process. And all we have to do is just remind ourselves we're safe in our bodies in any moment with Apollo, with breath, with yoga, with movement practices, whatever it is, soothing touch, soothing music, whatever it is that's reminding us we're safe, will naturally augment and kick off or restart the self-healing process. So the more that we soothe ourselves and keep ourselves in a soothed state and safe, knowing we're safe, then the more we heal ourselves naturally, regardless of whether you believe that's possible or not.
Yeah, I agree on that. Well, big pharma are not very fan of what you just said, but they have to deal with it. And the second is one question for you is like our body is still very solid at hiding any illness, or like there's stage 1, stage 2 cancer that cannot be detected before stage 3. You don't even feel anything. So on the self-healing process, there's like certain gaps sometimes that can be discussable. But I think that it's not the purpose of the discussion with Apollo Neuro here. You've been into psychedelics. I love that topic. And you are a fan of everything that is related to consciousness. Now, Apollo works on aligning the body with your mind and putting you in a pace that you feel safe. Where the consciousness of a person starts in the use of Apollo. I know it can be a bit tricky to get into that discussion, but if you're open to it, I would love to scrutinize the brain of a psychiatrist.
Sure. So I think the best way to think about it is that the word psychedelic means to reveal the mind. Psyche means mind. Delos means to show or to reveal. So what we're really talking about is entering into states that don't require drugs. They're just states of mind that where parts of our subconscious, the parts of us beneath our awareness, are now in our awareness. So things that we didn't know about ourselves, things that we might have known about ourselves in the past, all of those things start to become available to us in our awareness. And the most common time that we experience these kinds of experiences is in our dreams. Dreams are like the original psychedelic state that we all experience in our lives. And so experiencing a psychedelic medicine is not actually foreign to most people. It's just reminding you of an experience you probably have had as a child or in your dreams. And the way that psychedelic medicines work is that in therapy, is that to heal people, is they work by activating or amplifying certain pathways in our brains around safety. And that's safety towards self and it's safety towards others. And the safety towards others, when you have a good, a really great relationship with your therapist in the office, that safety towards others serves as a model of trust for us to learn as patients, to learn to trust ourselves again. Because trauma, the core wound of trauma is distrust in ourselves. Because we learned that we did something that got us into a traumatic or traumatizing situation. So how can I trust myself to not get myself into that situation again, right? And there's a core distrust that forms around that traumatic experience, especially when people in our environment blame us afterwards for what happened, right? Which happens most of the time in trauma. Unfortunately, it's just the way it is. It's first thing that people hear when they get out of a traumatic situation, they admit it to somebody is, how could you have let that happen, right? Or how could you get yourself into that situation? You should have done the following, right? That is not how we should be responding to people after a traumatic situation. That actually makes the trauma more concrete and more solid and reinforces the self-distrust that builds as a result of the trauma. And distrust in ourselves means that we don't feel safe in our own skin anymore. So how do you fix that? You apply tools to the body that start with empathy, eye-to-eye contact, soothing touch, soothing music, non-judgmental listening that you get in therapy with a great therapist or a good friend that you trust who's not judging you, who knows how to listen well. And that all of that helps you feel safe. And when that doesn't work, when we don't get to the solution where people are actually better as a result of just those those natural things, then we can start to think about including things like psychedelic medicine, because psychedelic medicines for a period of 1 to 8 hours can masterfully amplify or catalyze that safety in the therapeutic experience because they amplify whatever you bring in. And so if you set the experience up for a very safe experience with your therapists or guides, then psychedelic medicines sprinkled onto that can result in a rocket ship effect where people can get something like 10 years of therapy in 1 to 3 sessions, which is absolutely stunning. And the results we've seen are next level. And Apollo was designed to work through our understanding of psychedelic medicine and psychedelic therapy like MDMA, which directly activates the safety pathway in the brain. Apollo also directly activates the same safety pathways in the brain. And so it's inducing a very gentle, light psychedelic state, which is, I feel safe in my own skin right now. Let's reevaluate what's going on, because maybe what's going on around me is not actually a threat, and I can reappraise it, or I can remake the meaning around it and how it relates to me. And so it is, for all intents and purposes, a psychedelic state, but it's a very gentle psychedelic state, maybe like 40% of what you get from MDMA.
So
but
lower than microdosing then, yeah.
Well, microdosing is not even noticeable. Microdosing is by definition is not noticeable. If you take a microdose and you notice the effect, your dose is too high.
Too high. You're already high.
So this is like a microdose, but a little bit more, because most people notice the effect. But it is a very gentle effect that it just keeps you feeling safe, present, and embodied in the moment.
Would it be an idea to combine psychedelic and Apollo Neuro?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, we have thousands of patients who have been treated with Apollo and ketamine therapy in the US in the last 3 or 4 years with great effect. Apollo's been helpful for people to have better psychedelic experiences where they require less medicine, and it also helps them integrate their experiences after. And we also are the only wearable technology being used in psychedelic trials. Or with patients, we're also being used in collaboration with MAPS, the Multidisciplinary Association for Psychedelic Studies, that's conducting all the MDMA trials. Apollo is used for integration after MDMA and being studied for that now. And then we're also being used in group therapy with ketamine and psilocybin in a study in Canada for traumatized first responders. So we've seen an incredible amount of very positive data around this. And what's nice is Apollo's a wellness product, so anybody can buy it and use it and improve their psychedelic experiences and with the technology.
Yeah, maybe a dumb question, but is it FDA approved already, or
no? Apollo is in clinical trials for the FDA, but it's not FDA approved currently. It's a wellness product.
Okay. Yeah, I was wondering because it's not a chemical. Question for you, just for the fun of it. Do you think that we should put everybody on this planet on Apollo Neuro and ayahuasca?
So I'll take the second question first. Psychedelic drugs are not for everyone. There are lots of people who benefit from psychedelic medicine when it's administered properly in a highly controlled, intentional setting where there's safety is the number one most important thing. So psychedelic medicines can be very effective for lots of people, but it's not the same for everybody, and not everybody's a good candidate for it. The main groups of people who do not do well with psychedelic medicines are people who have bipolar disorder, people who have psychotic disorders, schizophrenia, severe delusional disorders, things like that, where their sense of reality can be destabilized by psychedelics. We do not recommend any of those folks taking psychedelic medicine. We also don't recommend people who have severe personality disorders taking psychedelic medicines, or severe heart conditions. So there's lots of people who are good candidates for psychedelics. There are also people who are taking certain kinds of medication, like SSRIs or other medications that can interfere with psychedelics and pose additional risk. So, while psychedelics in therapy have a ton of promise, they're not for everybody, and the patient selection, how we select who participates is very, very, very important. They're not for everybody. That's part of why we developed Apollo, because Apollo can be used by everyone. And if you're like me and you never learned how to deep breathe when you were a kid, or you never learned how to meditate, or never learned how to listen to your intuition, then tools like Apollo can be extremely helpful, if not life-changing. I mean, I talk about this all the time, but I used to have public speaking anxiety, and using Apollo, I trained myself to never have public speaking anxiety anymore in 3 months, just by using it when I spoke on stage. And it made a tremendous difference because I taught myself how to be mindful of my attention on stage by doing mindfulness in real time. And I never understood how to do that before. People told me how to do it. I'd heard about how
Yeah.
to do it.
And
I
to apply
taught
it, it's a different, yeah.
I'm a psychiatrist and a therapist. I even taught other people how to do it, but I couldn't do it myself well, right? And that's kind of like that's a real issue. And so it wasn't until I actually had a tool like Apollo where I was able to show myself that I could feel calm and in control of my attention on stage that I realized how much more in control of my mind and my body I was than I thought before, and it changed everything. It also helped me focus better.
Of
I used to
course.
be I used to be one of those people who was very easily
Well,
distractible.
ADHD or something like that. Yeah, for
Yeah,
sure.
I mean, not meeting diagnostic criteria for ADHD, but certainly someone who struggled to focus for extended periods of time. I procrastinated a lot. Just a lot of those same common things that many of us have. And I used Apollo for, regularly for a few months, and that completely went away. And I can focus on what I need to now without having to put in so much effort. And so, while we're still living in a world where psychedelic medicines are hard to access and they're hard to access safely, a lot of the benefits that we want from them come from activating that safety system and retraining ourselves to enter mindfully present states. And if you never learned how to do that as a kid, Apollo can help you do that very easily. And it's extremely safe. It has no side effects, and you can use it as much as you want. So
That's
from
it.
our
Yeah.
perspective,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's a great tool for anyone to
Mhm.
use. We have kids using it, elderly folks using it, adults using it, pregnant women using it. There's no one who isn't potentially a good candidate for using it, and it's much safer than psychedelic drugs or any drug.
Yeah, and it's just like you can have it and just put it for a couple of minutes, and it works very well. And you don't need to be trained for that. It's actually auto training. I agree on that.
Yeah.
Interesting. Have you ever thought about like in the future? I don't know if it's one of your projects or not, but I may ask, like combining the technology you have now and going further with maybe light and sound, some things that combine all these technologies that are very promising for the future.
Yeah, we are working on things like that. It takes a little bit of effort.
Hmm.
So it will be coming in the future. I can't tell you exactly when. But what we are focused on right now that's really exciting that I think your audience will be really interested in is now that we know that Apollo, and we have at least six peer-reviewed
Yeah.
scientific studies coming out about Apollo this year in scientific journals across over 2,000 subjects. So there's a ton of data coming out that we've already reviewed and seen, and Apollo works and it works reliably well for many people. And so, particularly around sleep. And so, what we saw people when we did a huge sleep study that's coming out this year, one of the things we saw and this was a large real world sleep study in over 1,300 people that was in collaboration with Oura Ring. And what we found that was so interesting was that when we watched how people used Apollo, they used it to fall asleep, and then they'd wake up in the middle of night and they'd reach down to their ankle or their wrist and they'd tap both buttons and they'd restart the sleep vibes again, and they would fall back asleep very quickly. And as we started to see this, we realized that people were using it for these two use cases more than any other single use case: winding down to fall asleep and then falling back asleep when they woke up in the middle of the night. So we thought, what are some really hard problems in mental health or health in general that we don't have solutions for that AI might be able to solve? And one of them that came to the top of the list was unwanted middle of the night wake ups, right? There's not a single, you could talk to any doctor in the world, there is not a single agreed upon solution to solve for
Yeah.
unwanted middle of the night wake ups.
Yeah.
There's no medications for it. There's no technology for it. Nothing solves this problem for people. And so we thought, well, what if we can predict, we know we can put you to sleep, and we can keep you asleep in the middle of the night. What if we could predict when people were about to wake up using predictive AI and turn on Apollo automatically to keep you asleep before you even wake up? And so we started training this algorithm 3 years ago, and we found that it did work. And as we started to train it further from the study with our Oura Ring, we were able to show that we can reliably detect, based on your movement and position from the
Temperature Sure, I
device
guess.
alone, yeah, when you're about to wake up, and then we can turn on Apollo on a very gentle vibration that you can't feel when you're awake, but when you're asleep, it keeps you asleep. And then we can track whether you woke up or not and how well it worked. And then we can iterate and teach it over time. So that's one of the newest, most exciting feature we've just released that
Wow.
works in partnership with Oura Ring and independently with the Apollo device itself. And it's literally giving people who wake up in the middle of the night over 60 minutes more sleep a night, which is so cool because
Yeah,
this
that's
is
just
AI solving a massive public health problem.
wow, this is brilliant. Honestly, I was not aware about that, but this is fantastic. I love the idea. Yeah, some
Oh,
people,
thank
well,
you.
when you get older, waking up at night or in the middle of the night is a crucial problem, but it's mainly related to prostate functions and stuff like that. So maybe you are going to solve that problem as well. We'll see.
I don't know about that, but definitely for young people who wake up a lot because of racing thoughts, and you don't have to pee, Apollo will actually fix that problem.
Yeah.
So if you have to pee, we want you to get up to go to the bathroom.
Yeah,
But
that's it's not going to be good for
right,
the prostate anyway.
yeah, otherwise you'll make a mess in bed and that's not fun. But we won't stop you from doing that. Or if your child is screaming in bed, we're not going to prevent you from getting up to attend to
Yeah.
them. But if it's just racing thoughts or restlessness that's causing the problem, we can prevent that. And that has a huge impact on people's quality of life.
Yeah, very cool. You know what? Today we're talking a lot about longevity. There is this summit coming up this weekend, and we have the X Prize and all these things that are all around the place. Mental health is directly linked to longevity at large, but it's so neglected. What can we do to solve this problem? Because we're talking about rapamycin, NAD protocols, hyperbaric chambers, and things like that. But what do we do about mental health? And on the other side, I'm looping back on we don't even teach our kids today how to breathe.
Yeah, no, it's true. So I think breathing is the first place to start, is learning how to breathe properly. That means either going to a class or doing an online training or using a tool like Apollo that teaches you how to breathe properly. We created Apollo to do this because the courses and the online practice is very hard. So Apollo will teach you how to breathe properly just by wearing it throughout the day and night. But ultimately, since we're talking about longevity, another very interesting study came out in the last few months showing that people who live in blue zones, like the Mediterranean, who eat Mediterranean diets, who live to be over 100 and have very good lives and very good health, have higher heart rate variability as the primary predictor than everything else,
Right.
anyone else.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is really important because heart rate variability has been found to be our best reliable metric of recovery and resilience in the body, how recovered we are, and how quickly we bounce back from stress. And there's no cap to heart rate variability. It can go as high as we want. We don't know
Yeah.
what the max is, but which is a really nice metaphor for human potential. We don't know what we're capable of, right? But we do know that when our heart rate variability is low, or lower than usual, that we're at an increased risk of illness, an increased risk of making mistakes, an increased risk of being irritable and not sleeping and not being able to get good rest. And if our heart rate variability is high, the opposite is true, right? We are
Mm-hmm.
increased likelihood of performing consistently at our peak, increased likelihood of recovery, increased likelihood of living longer and healthier lives. And so Apollo and these deep breathing techniques and regular yoga practice and meditation and good, healthy amounts of exercise, not overtraining, but healthy amounts of exercise, like 20 to 30 minutes of getting your heart rate up a day, all have a dramatic impact on heart rate variability going up. And what else does? It's other soothing things too. It's like getting more hugs from your loved ones, holding more, listening to soothing music. And that's where like Apollo and the sensory techniques really become powerful, because the more we do things that increase our heart rate variability, the healthier we are, and the healthier we are likely to be long term. And that is a really important thing to know. And medicine has not caught up with this yet. So this is really coming out of the elite athletes and military literature. And medicine is, just now starting to realize how important this is. But HRV also measures our mental health and our emotional health and our physical health. It's all of it together. So using that as a metric, which is tracked now by every single modern wearable fitness tracker, Oura Ring, Apple Watch, Whoop, and most modern Fitbits and Garmin's, they all track HRV. So as we start to use that as a tool, we can start to understand how healthy we are and where we are in our health and healing journey. And Apollo can be really helpful to just boost that for us because it's the only wearable that improves heart rate variability and accelerates our recovery so we feel well enough to be able to take good care of ourselves.
Yeah, thank you for those explanations. Very instructive. Do you think that in the future we're going to see less chemicals going through our body and more technologies like yours helping people to live better?
Absolutely. Because going back to the question you asked me earlier about self-healing, there is no healing outside of the self, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like all of our healing comes from within us. There are tools that can help us to learn to heal ourselves or remember to heal ourselves and how to do it better. But the healing doesn't come from out here. It comes from within here. So if we're dependent or reliant on medication and chemicals to heal us, then we are giving away our healing power to the medicine. And so what we are finding is that the only sustainable path forward to have a healthcare system that survives is that we have to learn and be taught how to heal ourselves again, because the system can't afford to sustain us and take care of all of us. There's just no way. It's too expensive. It requires too much time, too much help, too many drugs, and it doesn't work long term. So I think moving forward in the 21st century, we're seeing that we are going to see, we're still going to see medications being used, but we're going to see them being used more intentionally, more thoughtfully, and in only the cases where they're really needed. And then we're going to see a lot more focus on technology and natural techniques moving forward that at the very least, don't require lots of daily medication use, and more focus on training the inner healer.
Yeah, I love it. I agree. Setting up the baseline to everybody before taking any steps into trying to biohack yourself or whatsoever, you need to set the baseline by simple walk, breathing, good food, socializing, and all these things that you mentioned. I absolutely agree with you on this point. I want to question you on one topic that is absolutely not related, but we've seen so many companies coming into this space where we are at Biohackers Magazine. Quantum. They put quantum when they don't know how to explain it. What's your take on that?
It's like it's like AI, right? It's just a very much overused, misused term. I think, the way to think about what quantum really means is it's the energy, the invisible energy that connects everything. And we don't necessarily have a better way to describe it, but a lot of people use that word to describe supercomputers or to describe all these different things, and as a way to sound fancy, and it's not actually what it is. It's the same with AI, right? A lot of people throw around the word AI, but it's not actually AI that's happening. It's just regular intelligence and rule-based systems. And so, there are very big differences between true quantum and what many people talk about, and true AI and what many people are talking about. So, it's just important to educate ourselves on those words and those topics so that we can understand how to use them thoughtfully and in a way that makes sense.
Yeah, because you could have called your product Apollo Quantum, since it's using some energy that it's running through the body. So
right.
That was why. Where do we find your product, your information, news about you? Would you mind to share a couple of website, your social media with us?
Yeah, of course. You can find Apollo at apolloneuro.com. That's APOLLONEURO.com. You can also go to wearablehugs.com, which is what the kids call it. My website and my clinic website is apollo.clinic or drdave.io. And you can find me on social media at Instagram and Twitter at Dr. David Rabin. And if you want to check out any of my content on deep diving into the way psychedelics work and the latest news in the psychedelic space, check out the Psychedelic Report and Your Brain Explained on Spotify and Apple Podcast.
Nice. I'm going to check on that. I didn't do it before, but I'm going to do it. Thank you so much for sharing this knowledge, information, and everything. It's beautiful to see where the future is going for those technologies. Now, my last question for you, out of maybe off record, if you don't want. We have a cohort of people in our 5 million community biohackers willing to test product. Are you open to have your product tested by some independent biohackers?
What do you mean by tested?
Well, they like every time we put a product out there and we eventually put it through certification, we give the product to certain biohackers that are like veterans biohackers. And we ask them to, like in your case, would be like they wear it for a month and they report on that, their efficiency, how they feel, how they think it works. The access can be like either a loan or they buy the product at this discounted price. So it's about 50 people at the time for each product that we use. But if you're open to that, we are down. I love your product anyway.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, we're always happy to do a discount for your biohacker community. And for the biohacker community in general, if anybody wants to try it, we can offer a discount for sure. We have tested the product in several thousand people.
Yeah, already so many. Yeah.
So 50 people is, but any study is interesting. I think it's always nice to hear feedback.
Oh, we can put more than 50. It's just like our standard is going through 50, but we can put like 5,000 or 5 million if you want. But
I would love. I mean, we love doing research at Apollo. It's one of it's my background. I love research. Yeah. It's one of my most favorite things to do, especially crowdsourced research. So we're happy to provide a discount code to you and your community, and to make sure that you have one if you don't have one anymore. And we'd love to do a study together.
Yeah, thanks, Dave. I appreciate that. So still off record, yes, you know what happened to mine? After a certain time, I was doing workout, and I think that I bumped it, and he started to do like weird sound. And so that's why.
Sometimes that happens. It's the motor. If it gets hit hard, the motor can dislodge or something like that. But we can send you another one.
I appreciate that. Hey, thank you so much for your time here. Thank you, Dave.
All right, take care.
Take care. Keep going. Bye, you do awesome.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.